Tonight with Canto 22, but I did want to do, and you see that on your handout, just a couple of points, just a recap of 21, only because 21 and 22 do kind of go together because we're still in the fifth ditch of Circle 8. They both deal with the grafters. So in 21, we enter that fifth ditch where there's grafters. These are corrupt officials who sold favors and took bribes. I don't know if you remember last week, we saw in Canto 19, I believe, Pope Nicholas. It's on the picture. Actually, this is the picture on the front of our books. This is Dante speaking to Pope Nicholas, who has sold ecclesial offices.
So are we just seeing Pope's feet?
Yes, this is just their feet.
How do we know?
That's upside down.
Well, the only reason I'm assuming this is the one he's
him.
speaking to. Yes, Nicholas thought that Boniface VIII was speaking to him because Dante was pretty well convinced that Boniface was going to end up there too, because he really hated Boniface. But anyway, Nicholas was accused of selling ecclesial offices to family members, and so some of this carries over even into the grafters, selling favors, taking bribes. In Canto 21, they were submerged in basically a river of boiling pitch or boiling tar, where demons were trying to keep them under the tar, right, by hooking them and tearing them apart if they came out. And so this imagery is going to continue into the canto that we're in tonight. Also, last week, it ended with Virgil negotiating a passage forward with these demons. Remember, they were kind of being a little intentionally humorous / grotesque. It was a bit of a mockery. That continues into this canto tonight as well. Also, keep in mind as we continue to move forward that Dante, particularly in this circle, is known again as kind of the master of the disgusting, and so his imagery is intentionally disturbing and disgusting. And so we'll see that grotesque imagery, particularly in this circle, continue tonight. So the devil's mockery and the grafter's scheming become a stage on which Dante exposes how fraud ultimately consumes itself. So that's where we're going to pick up with tonight.
If you want, it's not the same translation. It's a little bit different. You can look at the scroll if you want to.
That'll sound great on audio.
Well, that's fine.
It is a little hard to keep up with it, so it's not.
Okay.
So
I can fix
You'll
that.
see. You'll decide whether it's helpful or not.
Well, last time I derailed everybody, so.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. How did that happen? It was like it was a really weird translation. Was it yours?
Well, what we're going to do, what we've done since you were here last, Connor, is we've just had one person read the canto instead of going around the room. So that way,
Probably for the best.
it's the same translation through the entire canto, and everybody kind of move on. So as always, I will read this first one. We're going to try to knock out 22 through 25, try and do all four again tonight just to kind of get through them. So we'll do 22 and 23 back to back, and 24 and 25 back to back, and then talk about, we'll do 22 and 23 together and then talk about them. 24, 25, and then talk about them. So
Okay.
I'll read 22. If somebody will read 23, I will. And then same with 24 and 25. If I need to read another one, I will. But let's at least get through these two, and then we'll talk about these two. So starting with Ciardi's notes at the beginning of the page, on page 173 in this translation. We're here in circle 8, Bolgia 5, or ditch 5, the grafters once again. So the poets set off with their escorts of demons. Dante sees the grafters lying in the pitch like frogs in water with only their muzzles out, and they disappear as soon as they sight the demons, and only a ripple of the surface betrays their presence. One of the grafters, an unidentified Navarrese, that's the city he's from, he ducks too late and is seized by the demons who are about to claw him, but Curlybeard, one of the demons, holds them back while Virgil questions him. The wretch speaks of his fellow sinners, Friar Gomita and Michel Zanke, while the uncontrollable demons rake him from time to time with their hooks. The Navarrese offers to lure some of his fellow sufferers into the hands of the demons, and when his plan is accepted, he plunges into the pitch and escapes. Hellkin and Grizzly, these are two of the other demons, fly after him, but too late. They start a brawl in midair and fall into the pitch themselves. Curlybeard immediately organizes a rescue party, and the poets, fearing the bad temper of the frustrated demons, take advantage of the confusion to slip away. All right, so it gets a little silly, but that's intentional. So, line 1. I have seen horsemen breaking camp. I have seen the beginning of the assault, the march and muster, and at times the retreat and riot. I have been where chargers trampled your land, O Artanes. I have seen columns of foragers, shocks of tourney, and running of tilts. I have seen the endless lines march to bells, drums, trumpets from far and near. I have seen them march on signals from a castle. I have seen them march with native and foreign gear. But never have I yet seen horse or foot, nor ship in range of land, nor sight of star, take its direction from so slow a toot. We went with the 10 fiends, a savage crew, but in church with saints, with stew pots in the tavern, as the old proverb wisely bids us do. All my attention was fixed upon the pitch, to observe the people who were boiling in it, and the customs and the punishments of that ditch. As dolphins surface and begin to flip their arched backs from the sea, warning the sailors to fall to and begin to secure ship, so now and then some soul, to ease his pain, showed us a glimpse of his back above the pitch, and quick as lightning disappeared again. And as, at the edge of the ditch, frogs squat about hiding their feet and bodies in the water, leaving only their muzzles sticking out, so stood the sinners in that dismal ditch. But as Curlybeard approached, only a ripple showed where they had ducked back into the pitch. I saw, the dread of it haunts me to this day, one linger a bit too long, as it sometimes happens when frog remains when another spurts away. And Catclaw, who was nearest, ran a hook through the sinner's pitchy hair and hauled him in, and he looked like an otter dripping from the brook. I knew the names of all the fiends by then. I had made a note of them at the first muster, and marching, had listened and checked them over again. "Hey, Crazy Red," the crew of demons cried, all together. "Give him a taste of your claws. Dig him open a little. Off with his hide." And I then, "Master, if you can find out, please, the name and history of that luckless one who has fallen into the hands of his enemies." My guide approached that wraith from the hot tar and asked him whence he came, and the wretch replied, "I was born and raised in the kingdom of Navarre. My mother placed me in the service to a knight, for she had borne me to a squanderer who killed himself when he ran through his birthright. Then I became a domestic in the service of good King Thibault. There I began to graft, and I account for it in this hot crevice. And Pigtusk, who at the ends of his lower lip shot forth 2 teeth more terrible than a boar's, made the wretch feel how one of them could rip. The mouse had come among bad cats, but here Curlybeard locked arms with him around him, crying, "While I've got hold of him, the rest stand clear." And turning his face to my guide, "If you want to ask him anything else," he added, "ask away before the others tear him limb from limb." And my guide to the sinner, "I should like to know if among the other souls beneath the pitch are any Italians." And the wretch said, "Just now I left a shade who came from parts nearby. Would I were still in the pitch with him, for then these hooks would not be giving me cause to cry." And suddenly Grafter bellowed in great heat, "We've stood enough!" And he hooked the sinner's arm, and raking it, ripped off a chunk of meat. Then Dragontooth wanted to play too, reaching down for a catch at the sinner's legs, but Curlybeard wheeled round and round with a terrifying frown, and when the fiends had somewhat given ground and calmed a little, my guide, without delay, asked the wretch who was staring at his wound, "Who is the sinner from whom you say you made your evil-starred departure to come ashore among these fiends?" And the wretch said, "It was the shade of Friar Gomita of Galura, the crooked stem of every fraud. When his master's enemies were in his hands, he won high praise from them. He took their money without cause or docket and let them go, and he was in all his dealings no petty bursar, but a kingly pocket. And with him His endless crony in the fosse is Don Miquel Zonke of Logodoro, and they babble about Sardinia without pause. But look, see that fiend grinning at your side? There is much more that I should like to tell you, but oh, I think he means to grate my hide. But their grim sergeant wheeled, sensing foul play, and turning on Cramper, who seemed to strike, ordered, "Clear off, you buzzard, clear off, I say." "If either of you would like to see and hear Tuscans or Lombards," the pale sinner said, "I can lure them out of hiding if you'll stand clear and let me sit here at the edge of the ditch, and get all these black talons out of sight. For while they're here, no one will leave the pitch. In exchange for myself, I can fish you up as pretty a mess of souls as you like. I have only to whistle the way we do when one of us gets free." Dead Dog raised his snout as he listened to him, and then, shaking his head, said, "Listen to the grafter spinning his trick so that he can jump from the brim." And the sticky wretch, who was all treachery, "Oh, I'm more than tricky when there's a chance to see my friends in greater misery." Helkin, against the will of the crew, could hold no longer. "If you jump," he said to the screaming wretch, "I won't come after you at a gallop, but like a hawk after a mouse. We'll clear the edge and hide behind the bank, and let's see if you're a trickster enough for us all." Reader, here is a new game. The fiends withdrew from the bank's edge, and Dead Dog, who at first was most against it, led the savage crew. The Navarrese chose his moment carefully, and planting both his feet against the ground, he leapt, and in an instant he was free. And the fiends were stung with shame, and of the lot Helkin most, who had been the cause of it. He leaped out madly, bellowing, "You're caught!" But a little good it did him. Terror pressed harder than wings. The sinner dove from sight, and the fiend, in full flight, had to raise his breast. A duck, when the falcon dives, will disappear exactly so, all in a flash, while he returns defeated and weary up the air. Grizzly, in a rage at the sinner's flight, flew over Helkin, hoping the wraith would escape, so he might find an excuse to start a fight. And as soon as the grafter sank below the pitch, Grizzly turned his talons against Helkin, locked with him claw to claw above the ditch. But Helkin was sparrow-hawk enough for two, and clawed him well, and ripping one another, they plunged together into the hot stew. The heat broke up the brawl immediately, but their wings were smeared with pitch, and they could not rise. Curlybeard, upset at his company, commanded 4 to fly to the other coast at once, with all their grapples. And at top speed, the fiends divided, each one to his post, some on the near edge, some along the far, and they stretched their hooks out to the clotted pair, who were already cooked deep through the scar of their first burn. And turning to one side, we slipped off, leaving them thus occupied. All right.
23. The hypocrites. The poets are pursued by the fiends and escape them by sliding down the sloping bank of the next pit. They are now in the 6th Bolgia. Here the hypocrites, weighted down by great leaden robes, walk eternally round and round a narrow track. The robes are brilliantly gilded on the outside and are shaped like a monk's habit. For the hypocrite's outward appearance shines brightly and passes for holiness, but under that show lies the terrible weight of his deceit, which the soul must bear through all eternity. The poets talk to 2 jovial friars, and come upon Caiaphas, the chief sinner of that place. Caiaphas was the high priest of the Jews who counseled the Pharisees to crucify Jesus in the name of public expedience. He is punished by being himself crucified to the floor of hell by 3 great stakes, and in such a position that every passing sinner must walk upon him. Thus he must suffer upon his own body the weight of all the world's hypocrisy, as Christ suffered upon his body the pain of all the world's sins. The jovial friars tell Virgil how he may climb from the pit, and Virgil discovers that Malacoda lied to him about the bridges over the 6th Bolgia. Silent, apart, and unattended we went, as minor friars go when they walk abroad, one following the other. The incident recalled the fable of the mouse and the frog that Aesop tells, for compared attentively, point by point, pig is no closer to hog than the one case to the other, and as one thought springs from another, so the comparison gave birth to a new concern, at which I caught my breath in fear. This thought ran through my mind: these fiends, through us, have been made ridiculous, and have suffered insult and injury of a kind to make them smart. Unless we take good care, now rage is added to their natural spleen. They will hunt us down as greyhounds hunt the hare. Already I felt my scalp grow tight with fear. I was staring back in terror as I said, "Master, unless we find concealment here, and soon, I dread the rage of the fiends. Already they are yelping on our trail. I imagine them so vividly I can hear them now. And he, were I a pane of leaded glass, I could not summon your outward look more instantly into myself than I do your inner thought. Your fears were mixed already with my own, with the same suggestion and the same dark look, so that of both I form one resolution. The right bank may be sloping. In that case we may find some way down to the next pit, and so escape from the imagined chase." He had not finished answering me thus, when, not far off, their giant wings outspread, I saw the fiends come charging after us. Seizing me instantly in his arms, my guide, like a mother wakened by a midnight noise to find a wall of flame at her bedside, who takes her child and runs, and more concerned for him than for herself, does not pause even to throw a wrap about her, raised me, turned, and down the rugged bank from the high summit, flung himself down supine onto the slope which walls the upper side of the next pit. Water that turns the great wheel of the land mill never ran faster through the end of a sluice at the point nearest the paddles. As down that hill my guide and master bore me on his breast, as if I were not a companion but a son, and the soles of his feet had hardly come to rest on the bed of the depth below, when on the height we had just left, the fiends beat their great wings. But now they gave my guide no cause for fright, for the providence that gave them the fifth pit to govern as the ministers of its will takes from their souls the power of leaving it. About us now in the depth of the pit we found a painted people, weary and defeated. Slowly, in pain, they paced it round and round. All wore great cloaks, cut too as an ample a size as those worn by the Benedictines of Cluny. The enormous hoods were drawn over their eyes. The outside is all dazzle, golden and fair. The inside lead, so heavy that Frederick's capes, compared to these, would seem as light as air. O weary mantle for eternity! We turned to the left again along their course, listening to their moans of misery. But they moved so slowly down that barren strip, tired by their burden, that our company was changed at every movement of the hip. And walking thus, I said, "As we go on, may it please you to look about among these people for any whose name or history may be known." And one who understood Tuscan cried to us there as we hurried past, "I pray you check your speed, you who run so fast through the sick air. It may be I am one who will fit your case." And at his words my master turned and said, "Wait now, then go with him at his own pace." I waited there and saw along the track two souls who seemed in haste to be with me, but the narrow way and their burden held them back. When they had reached me down that narrow way, they stared at me in silence and amazement, then turned to one another. I heard one say, "This one seems, by the motion of his throat, to be alive, and if they are dead, how is it that they are allowed to shed the leaden coat?" And then to me, "O Tuscan, come so far to the college of the sorry hypocrites, do not disdain to tell us who you are." And I was born and raised a Florentine. On the green and lovely banks of Arno's waters, I go with the body that was always mine. But who are you who, sighing as you go, distill in floods of tears that drown your cheeks? What punishment is this that glitters so? These burnished robes are of thick lead, said one, and are hung on us like counterweights, so heavy that we, their weary fulcrums, creak and groan. Jovial friars and Bolognese were we. We were chosen jointly by your Florentines to keep the peace, an office usually held by a single man. Near the Gardingo, one still may see the sort of peace we kept. I was called Catalano, he Lodaringo. I began, "O friars, you're evil," and then I saw a figure crucified upon the ground by 3 great stakes, and I fell still with awe. When he saw me there, he began to puff great sighs into his beard, convulsing all his body, and Friar Catalano, following my eyes, said to me, "That one nailed across the road counseled the Pharisees that it was fitting one man be tortured for the public good. Naked he lies fixed there, as you see, in the path of all who pass. There he must feel the weight of all through all eternity. His father-in-law and the others of the council, which was a seed of wrath to all the Jews, are similarly staked for the same evil." Then I saw Virgil marvel for a while over that soul so ignominiously stretched on the cross in hell's eternal exile. Then, turning, he asked the friar, "If your law permit, can you tell us if somewhere along the right there is some gap in the stone wall of the pit, through which we may climb to the next brink without the need of summoning the black angels and forcing them to raise us from this sink?" He, "Nearer than you hope, there is a bridge that runs from the great circle of the scarp and crosses every ditch from ridge to ridge, except that in this it is broken. But with care you can mount the ruins which lie along the slope and make a heap on the bottom." My guide stood there, motionless for a while, with a dark look. At last he said, "He lied about this business, who spears the sinners yonder with his hook. And the friar, once at Bologna, I heard wise and discussing the devil's sins. Among them I heard that he is a liar and the father of lies." When the sinner had finished speaking, I saw the face of my sweet master darken a bit with anger. He set off at a great stride from that place. He turned from that weighted hypocrite to follow in the prints of his dear feet.
Thank you. All right, let's back up to the grafters in Canto 22 and chat about them. So what in that canto just kind of stood out to you? What kind of questions you got before I give you some notes?
Not a
myself?
question, but, how often the evil will turn upon themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They will try to torture you, but then they will turn on themselves.
It's nice to know that we don't have that problem here anymore.
No, not at all. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
There does seem to be chaos in hell.
Just a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's chaos, but it's weirdly ordered chaos, if that makes sense, right? Like, I mean, it kind of stays within its
chaos
boundaries.
within order.
Yeah.
So they're battling themselves in the air,
Mm-hmm.
grappling in the air, but within their own little circle or
Mm-hmm.
ditch, which they can't leave.
That's
They're
right.
trying to be chaotic, but they're restrained.
Their chaos can only go so far.
That's right.
Dante's Inferno just makes it will scare the hell out of you.
Yeah, it's supposed to. For the sake of argument, I did put a little definition of grafting. I know we looked at them a little bit last week, but I thought it would be helpful just because as I was going through this, I'm like, I need a simple definition to kind of keep in the back of my mind of what this is. And it's really just, again, just selling offices or judgments or civic duties for personal gain. This was a serious civic crime in Florence. Dante himself was actually accused of it while he was in exile, but there was no evidence found against him. But graft is, at the end of the day, in relation to how we're looking at the Inferno and a disorder of love, and it's it's fraud of the public trust. So it definitely goes down into the community itself. It twists responsibility into personal exploitation. So when we're looking at this, we can understand really the anger that Dante has toward it and putting it where he does, partly because he's been accused of it, but also of how it can corrupt society as well.
It sounds like the guy that was getting tortured, he worked with the really bad man, Friar Gamita.
Mm-hmm.
That he was the one that, I guess, pulled him into the business.
Into grafting, yeah.
Yeah. That's what it seemed to say. That he...
We're watching some early Law and Order, and I mean, almost
Organized crime.
every incident says bad cops. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, the
cops
bad
that have just gone, you know, because and part of it is because they can't
Make
afford
a
to live in
living.
New York City, so they.
The temptations are great.
Yeah, so then they just, you know, if somebody's willing to pay them a little bit of extra to overlook this, you know, so it's for my family.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You can justify almost anything in that regard, yeah. The key point in this really is that grafter from Navarre, I believe I'm saying that right. Obviously, the aspect here, and this is kind of what you were getting at, Charlotte, in relation to evil kind of turning on itself. He tricks the demons, right, into letting him go, so that way he can lure out other grafters for them to torture. But the issue is, even though he gets away, it's not like he really gets away. He gets away to return to the suffering and torment that he was already experiencing before. So his trickery is essentially futile because he's still in hell. It's not like he's actually figuring out a way to escape. He's just clever enough to not have more meat ripped from his bones by the demons. So that's really as far as it goes for him.
But it seems like trickery was the point.
Keeps cycling though, doesn't it?
Yep.
It just keeps cycling and cycling and cycling.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, the devils started turning on themselves, too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And what were you saying, Craig?
Yeah, his attitude seemed to be it was trickery for its own sake.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter if it didn't work out.
Yeah,
It was just,
Yeah,
that's
we
what he
did
does.
that.
just
He's a trickster.
a trickster to be a
That's
trickster.
what tricksters do.
Yeah.
The note here on Friar Gamita says he was ultimately hanged when he was found guilty of taking bribes to let prisoners escape. So we've got this little prisoner here doing his escape thing in an Inferno. I imagine that was intentional.
Mm-hmm. The only other thing I have for this, especially in relation to that grafter, is that it shows us how fraud is self-defeating and futile. So what works on earth through deceit and bargaining and manipulation obviously offers no real escape from judgment. So even when it succeeds, it turns the sinner back into the same suffering and damnation. In this case, we see it played out specifically in this particular grafter jumping back into the pitch. Anything else in that canto before we look at the one that Craig read? That one has some more vivid imagery, or more interesting imagery, to me at least.
I wonder how Dante would view the unjust steward.
that one in the Bible.
Is that not grafting?
I would imagine so.
He's probably upside down here somewhere.
He's down there somewhere.
He's probably done it seriously. The one in the parable who, hey, write down this. Okay, yeah, I would imagine that would be embezzlement or grafting, but embezzlement would probably be a form of grafting. So.
It's a bunch of different stuff, you know.
Mhm.
So, I mean, in some ways, picking up a tool from the workshop to take us thievery, but in a sense, it's taking away money that the citizens have paid.
Yeah,
for, so.
yeah. Now he does, and the final two cantos we'll look at tonight are both set aside for the thieves. So he does separate them a little bit from grafting.
Yeah, it is different. Different business.
But yeah.
So it looks like grafting is particularly political.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to be in a position of authority
to do graft.
to get graft.
Mm-hmm.
Payola.
So in relation to the parable of unjust steward, I
It's
guess.
the opposite of graft.
Well,
He's
he
making
was
off
doing it to try to get favor with the debtors.
Yeah.
So in that way, you know, he did have something to gain, or
Mhm.
that's what he was hoping for.
I mean, he had a bit of authority, at least. I mean, he was
Yeah.
the bookkeeper, essentially.
Didn't he say at least he got something, so he had something to give his master, better than nothing? I don't know. Can't remember that
I don't think that's
parable completely.
Yeah, I don't remember
You
that
think
being
that being
expressed
there?
explicitly. But he was trying to make friends with the debtors,
Mhm.
you know, by falsifying their records.
Mhm.
So it's something to gain, but it not direct payment.
Yeah.
Graft is usually direct
A
payment,
direct payment.
pay to play type of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, what about Canto 23? This area of the hypocrites.
The thing that I wouldn't expect, before he was never, Virgil was never nervous. He would always say,
Mhm.
we're here, we're protected.
Mhm.
And he kind of, at that moment, that he wasn't feeling that way.
He was a bit nervous.
He was, but they were both, nervous.
It's interesting from a literary point of view because there's not a lot of talk. I mean, the hypocrites have always been around, but it's not really used that much until Jesus begins to really use it. And hypocrites, he calls them that, calls them out.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, because it's interesting, in Cana, in that area, there were 5 theaters built by the Greeks that were still performing.
Mhm.
And so they had to change their names because hypocrite is actor.
Mm.
It's actor. So they would have to put honest in front of their name.
Honest.
We're now honest hypocrites.
Honest hypocrites.
We're just doing this as a play,
Yeah.
not to trick you.
We're not trying to be deceptive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting, and there was one right outside of, there's a ruin of an ancient Greek theater right outside of Nazareth. So, close to the sea up there, the
Mhm.
Sea of Galilee. And it's not far from where Jesus grew up.
Mhm.
So they could have built scenery.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Heard some of the great plays.
yeah.
The great Greek plays. Yeah.
He had to have known about the use of the term hypocrite.
Yeah, yeah. Couple of things that I've got for this, and then anybody can jump in with comments. Hypocrisy. So why this matters, at least for our study, and Dante's purpose in it, is that it corrodes not only personal integrity but the community itself. So hypocrisy distorts appearances and hides rot beneath a mask of holiness, particularly with these here that are gilded with essentially robes of lead, right? So these are people that are meant to be, that pretended to be holy in life, and now they are wearing essentially inverted robes that are weighing them down in hell. That stood out to me. The thing that really stood out to me the most, though, was where Virgil bears up Dante himself. So obviously they're running from the demons that are chasing them. There's a particular line that he uses. It's lines 46 and 47. So it's after he's already picked him up. This is toward the top of page 182. He says, "My guide and master bore me upon his breast as if I were not a companion but a son." I really liked this line. To me, what stood out here was that this is not just physical protection. Right now, obviously, yes, Virgil is terrified in this moment. Like it doesn't happen much, as we've seen as we've gone through this poem, where he's not nervous or terrified. He's more of, this is the will of heaven. We're gonna make it through. So it is a blend of that, but it's also, I think, Virgil's not a believer, obviously, or he wouldn't be at hell. But I think it's sort of a picture of discipleship more than just mentorship. This is a dark place, and he picks up his disciple and carries him through this dark place because he can't take it. He can't make it himself. Right? There's an urgency here. There's this devotion to the pupil from the teacher. And usually we see it the other way around, right? A pupil is very devoted to his teacher, but here it's definitely the other way around. So while Virgil cannot bring Dante to salvation, he still becomes an image of how discipleship is supposed to kind of work, right? Where we take those that are under our tutelage and pick them up and carry them through when they can't go through these dark places by themselves or on their own. So that really just stood out to me in the imagery there. Yeah, let me stop for a minute and let folks talk. Some thoughts, comments on the hypocrites. And then we'll talk about Caiaphas.
Church tradition definitely reveres the philosophers
Mm-hmm.
and holds them in high regard.
I know a lot of the
Virgil
fathers.
would have
Yeah.
been-
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't just a poet; he was a philosopher.
Yeah. I know the fathers really, some of them really struggled with assuming Socrates did not make it into heaven. Like,
It's kind of a gray area.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, they tried as hard as they could to get him in heaven.
Yeah.
Well, there are churches that have statues of the Greek philosophers
Mhm.
inside their church. You know, it's an open question.
Yeah. Well, and not Virgil, Dante places the philosophers, Virgil, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle.
In nice hell.
Yeah, he places them in
It's
limbo.
been nice hell.
So limbo not being purgatory, but limbo basically being the good neighborhood of hell. So in the first circle. So there's no suffering that happens here. They're very much aware that they do not have hope of making it to heaven, and that's how they suffer. But otherwise, their eternity is
It's pretty.
it's pretty easy compared to the rest of
And
hell.
it's a lovely place.
Yes.
Is
It's not.
limbo where the Old Testament?
This is also where the Old Testament
The
saints would have
patriarchs?
been
Yeah.
that Christ came and harrowed. Yes, so Dante does get into this in some of those circles.
And there's some damage to some of the circles because of the earthquake.
It's a place where babies that were not baptized, and they died
Yeah, and
before they were baptized,
yes.
they would go to limbo.
Yes, and that, yeah. And yeah, so there's a blend here. So Dante does mention the harrowing of hell, but he also mentions the earthquake that takes place at the moment of the death of Christ. And because hell descends into the center of the earth, you see ramifications of that earthquake all the way through hell. So there's parts of this circle that are damaged because of that earthquake. The actual infrastructure and the earthworks itself are damaged because of the death of Christ. So, but yeah. So they're placed in limbo.
I guess jovial friars was a group of friars for real because they are not jovial. They said that in life they were jovial friars in Bolognese,
Yeah, there's
but
another
they
one.
are not jovial here. They're crying. I'm sure there is a note.
What?
Yeah, a nickname given to the military monks of the Order of the Glorious Virgin Mary in Bologna.
But they don't know anything more.
Their rules became so scandalously lax, and their management of worldly affairs were self-seeking. The Pope disbanded them.
These in particular, the only note that I have is that they were meant to be kind of peacekeepers, so like Jedi, but they sowed discord instead.
Yeah.
And so they embodied hypocrisy really at the civic level, but also at the religious level.
So now they wear the material of war.
Yeah, they wear leaded cloaks instead of cloaks of comfort. Yeah.
But do you happen, and I'll just ask the question because it kind of brings up the whole concept of fools, fools for Christ, when Fool's Day was eliminated. You know, it used to be January 1st was All Fool's Day, and for years and years, and then the church hated it so much because they could make fun of the priest, make fun of the pope.
That was the Middle Ages, right?
It was in the Middle Ages, yeah. So I'm guessing
It's a featured element of Hunchback of Notre Dame.
That's right.
It's at least how the movie opens.
Yeah, that's right. We saw it.
It was January 1st?
that was All Fool's Day or something. That's what they would celebrate. They had that one day where you could just go.
And make fun of
I
everybody.
thought that was the 1st of April.
Well, maybe you can look it up. You know, are you looking at January 1st or are you looking at All Fool's Day?
All Fool's Day.
And what did they say?
Okay, it's both. New Year's Day was celebrated on March 25th. So it's both.
I know they were just the religious authorities hated it so much because they were
They don't
actually
like to be made
exposing
fun
them as
I imagine everybody hated it, except for the
Well, the people.
peasants.
Yeah, they liked it.
because you're exposing what they were, so.
Yeah.
While he continues to look that up, let me make a couple of comments about Caiaphas before we move on. So Caiaphas obviously is his punishment reveals hypocrisy at its core, right? This is self-serving pragmatism disguised as religious duty. He becomes the ultimate sign of hypocrisy's betrayal in this circle, not just of human trust, but of God's saving work. So his punishment is intentionally an inversion of the suffering of Christ. So Christ bears the weight of sin upon himself on the cross. This guy bears the weight of sin upon him, lying face up in the muck in hell while being crucified. But even with that imagery, my favorite part of this, oddly enough, if you want to say favorite part, is lines 121 to 124. Because Virgil stares for a brief moment at Caiaphas, and then he just kind of turns to one of the friars and just kind of moves on. And I thought that imagery was really fascinating because he's really not, Virgil, I mean, kind of considers Caiaphas for a moment, but then just kind of brushes him off. Like it doesn't matter, right?
You're right.
He's like, well, okay, this just is what it is.
How can we go? Is there what's the instructions to how to get out of here?
Yeah. It's like, okay, this is his punishment. Obviously, he thought he meant something in life, but he really means nothing at this point. So, let's just move on. And I thought that was a really a fascinating reaction. So,
He becomes nothing.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Well, as David points out, Christ said a lot about hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
And this was actually one of the hypocrites that Christ himself accused. So, I mean, that may have been part of that,
Mm-hmm.
what was behind those lines.
Now, are we going to find
Just
out?
sort of gaping at him. So it's sort of like Isaiah 14, all the people gathered around gaping. Is this the guy really set himself above Christ?
Yeah. It has that same feel to it here. What were you about to ask, Charlotte? I'm sorry.
Are we going to find out why? He says, I saw the face of my sweet master darken a bit with anger, and he set off with a great stride from that place.
So Virgil is angry here because, I don't know if you remember from last week, but when they get this company of demons to guide them, their leader says, well, you cannot get over these particular ditches because there's damage, and so we're going to have to bury you that direction. And so here he finds out that he lied.
but that's not true.
So that's why he's mad.
Okay,
He's mad because he was lied to.
He lied about.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what he was saying. He lied about this Mistus, he who spears sinners yonder with his hook. Okay.
Yes. So that's what he's referring to.
And then that's why the friar said, "Yep, the devil. He's a liar and the father of lies.
Yeah.
That's just what he is. You can't believe anybody." Okay, got it.
That's it. That's the reason. So he's just mad because he was lied to. So, all that to say, in relation to our study, so what? Right? What was the point? So these cantos confront us with the ways corruption and hypocrisy distort not only individuals but entire communities. They both sins hide themselves, graft under secrecy, hypocrisy under a mask of holiness. But in hell, the mask is stripped away and the truth becomes unbearable. Our descent with Dante calls us to resist the temptation of appearances and to serve God and neighbor with honesty rather than fractured by fraud or hypocrisy. So this is what matters in relation to our journey into this depth with Dante as we continue.
Of course, we have to admit that we are all hypocrites when it gets down to it.
In some form or fashion.
We had that discussion. You just say if you sin, you're being a hypocrite, but
Well, we put on the spiritual mask at times. So
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, do we have time? Do you want to go through the next two cantos? It's almost 7:30 to knock it. Yeah, to knock out the thieves since we have our notes on it.
Which one of the next two is the best one?
Well, they kind of go together is the problem. They're both on the thieves, so they're in the same ditch for this one. I have more highlights in the next one than I do in the final one. But I can at least give you the notes to it and then you can read Canto 25 on your own if we want to read Canto 24. Or we can just blitz through them real fast and just know they're on the thieves. So I'm willing to power through if you guys are, but I want to make sure that nobody feels overwhelmed and wanting to go too late.
Fine with me.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, do y'all, one of you mind reading? Both of you mind? Okay.
I'll read.
Yeah. Okay. So go ahead and read 24.
The poets climb the right bank laboriously across the bridge of the seventh Volga and descend the far bank to observe the thieves. They find the pit full of monstrous reptiles who curl themselves about the sinners like living coils of rope, binding each sinner's hands behind his back and knotting themselves through the loins. Other reptiles dart about the place, and the poets see one of them fly through the air and pierce the jugular vein of one sinner, who immediately bursts into flames until only ashes remain. From the ashes, the sinner reforms painfully. These are Dante's first observations of the thieves and will be carried further in the next canto. But the first allegorical retribution is immediately apparent. Thievery is reptilian in its secrecy. Therefore, it is punished by reptiles. The hands of the thieves are the agents of their crimes. Therefore, they are bound forever. And as the thief destroys his fellow men by making their substance disappear, so is he painfully destroyed and made to disappear, not once, but over and over again. The sinner who has risen from his own ashes reluctantly identifies himself as Vanni Fushi. He tells a story, and to revenge himself for having been forced to reveal his identity, he utters a dark prophecy against Dante. In the turning season of the youthful year, when the sun is warming its rays beneath Aquarius and the days and nights already begin to near their perfect balance, the hoarfrost copies then the image of his white sister on the ground. But the first sun wipes away the work of his pen. The peasants, who lack fodder, then arise and look about and see the fields all white, and hear their lambs bleat. Then they smite their thighs, go back into the house, walk here and there, pacing, fretting, wondering what to do, then come outdoors again, and there, despair falls from them when they see how the earth's face is changed in so little time, and they take their staffs and drive their lambs to feed. So in that place, when I saw my guide and master's eyebrow lower, my spirits fell, and I was sorely vexed, and as quickly came the plaster to the sore. For when he had reached the ruined bridge, he stood and turned on me that sweet and open look with which he had greeted me in the dark wood. When he had paused and studied carefully the heap of stones, he seemed to reach some plan, for he turned and opened his arms and lifted me. Like one who works and calculates ahead and is always ready for what happens next, so, raising me above that dismal bed to the top of one great slab of the fallen slate, he chose another, saying, "Climb here, but first test it to see if it will hold your weight." It was no climb for a lead-hung hypocrite, for scarcely we, he light and I assisted, could crawl, hand-hold by hand-hold, from the pit. And were it not that the bank along this side was lower than the one down which we had slid, I, at least, I will not speak for my guide, would have turned back. But as all of the vast rim of Malbolge leans toward the lowest well, so each succeeding valley and each brim is lower than the last. We climbed the face and arrived by great exertion to the point where the last rock had fallen from its place. My lungs were pumping as if they could not stop. I thought I could not go on, and I sat exhausted the instant I had clambered to the top. "Up on your feet! This is no time to tire," my master cried. "The man who lies asleep will never wake in fame, and his desire and all his life drift past him like a dream, and the traces of his memory fade from time like smoke in air or ripples on a stream. Now, therefore, rise, control your breath, and call upon the strength of soul that wins all battles and lets it sink and the gross bodies fall. There is a longer ladder yet to climb. This much is not enough. For if you understand me, show that you mean to profit from your time. I rose and made my breath appear more steady than it really was, and I replied, "Lead on, as it pleases you to go. I am strong and ready." We picked our way up the cliff, a painful climb, for it was narrower, steeper, and more jagged than any we had crossed up to that time. I moved along, talking to hide my faintness, when a voice that seemed unable to form words rose from the depth of the next chasm's darkness. I do not know what it said, though by then the sage had led me to the top of the next arch. But the speaker seemed in a tremendous rage. I was bending over the brim, but living eyes could not plumb to the bottom of that dark. Therefore I said, "Master, let me advise that we cross over and climb down the wall. For just as I hear the voice without understanding, so I look down and make out nothing at all." "I make no other answer than the act," the master said. "The only fit reply to a fit request is silence and the fact." So we moved down the bridge to the stone pier that shores the end of the arch on the 8th bank, and there I saw the chasm's depths made clear. And there great coils of serpents met my sight, so hideous a mass that even now the memory makes my blood run cold with fright. Let Libya boast no longer, for though its sands breed Heladrids, Jaculi, Ampharians, Syncriads, and two-headed Amphisbans, it never bred such a variety of vipers, no, not with all Ethiopia and all the lands that lie beyond by the Red Sea. Amid that swarm, naked and without hope, people ran terrified, not even dreaming of a hole to hide in or of a heliotrope. Their hands were bound behind by coils of serpents which thrust their heads and tails between the loins and bunched in front, a mass of knotted torments. One of the damned came racing round a boulder, and as he passed, a great snake shot up and bit him where the neck joins with the shoulder. No mortal pen, however fast it flashed over the page, could write down O or I as quickly as he flamed and fell in ash. And when he was dissolved into a heap upon the ground, the dust rose of itself and immediately resumed its former shape. Precisely so, philosophers declare, the phoenix dies and then is born again when it approaches its 500th year. It lives on tears of balsam and of incense, and all its life it eats no herb or grain, and nard and precious myrrh sweeten its cerements. And as a person fallen in a fit, possessed by a demon or some other seizure that fetters him without his knowing it, struggles up to his feet and blinks his eyes, still stupefied by the great agony he has just passed, and, looking round him, sighs. Such was the sinner when at last he rose. O power of God, how dreadful is thy will, which in its vengeance rains such fearful blows. Then my guide asked him who he was, and he answered reluctantly, "Not long ago I reigned into this gullet from Tuscany. I am Vani Fushi, the beast. A mule among men, I chose the bestial life above the human. Savage Pistoia was my fitting den." I, to my guide, detained him a bit longer and asked what crime it was that sent him here. I knew him as a man of blood and anger. The sinner, hearing me, seemed discomforted, and he turned and fixed his eyes upon my face with a look of dismal shame. At length he said, "That you have found me out among the strife and misery of this place grieves my heart more than did the day that cut me from my life. But I am forced to answer truthfully. I am put down so low because it was I who stole the treasure from the sacristy, for which others once were blamed. But that you may find less to gloat about if you escape here, prick up your ears and listen to what I say. First, Pistoia is emptied of the black. Then Florence changes her party and her laws From Valdemargaret, the god of war brings back a fiery vapor wrapped in turbid air. Then, in a storm of battle at Vicino, the vapor breaks apart the mist, and there every wight shall feel his wounds anew. And I have told you this, that it may grieve you. A lot there. I didn't quite get.
Yeah. Well, the next canto actually picks up with literally just where this conversation ends. So, if nobody else wants to read it, I'm happy to read it. Just throwing that out there. Okay. Well, I'll read it.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about it. See Artie's notes. He says Vanny's rage mounts to the point where he hurls an ultimate obscenity at God, and the serpents immediately swarm over him, driving him off in great pain. The centaur, Cacus, his back covered with serpents and a fire-eating dragon, also gives chase to punish the wretch. Dante then meets 5 noble thieves of Florence and sees the further retribution visited upon the sinners. Some of the thieves appear first in human form, and others as reptiles. All but one of them suffer a painful transformation before Dante's eyes. Agnello appears in human form and is merged with Cianfa, who appears as a 6-legged lizard. Buoso appears as a man and changes form with Francesco, who first appears as a tiny reptile. Only Puccio Ciancato remains unchanged, though we are made to understand that his turn will come. For endless and painful transformation is the final state of the thieves. In life, they took the substance of others, transforming it into their own. And so in hell, their very bodies are constantly being taken from them, and they are left to steal back a human form from some other sinner. Thus, they waver constantly between man and reptile, and no sinner knows what to call his own. Basically, I would argue that this is a loss of identity, like fully and completely, right? So, picking right up from where you left off, Charlotte, when he had finished, the thief, to his disgrace, raised his hands, and with both fists making figs, cried, "Here, God, I throw them in your face." Theriat, the snakes became my friends, for one coiled itself about the wretch's neck, as if it were saying, "You shall not go on." And another tied his arms behind him again, knotting its head and tail between his loins, so tight that he could not move a finger in pain. Pistoia, why have you not decreed to turn yourself to ashes and end your days, rather than spread the evil of your seed? In all of hell's corrupt and sunken halls, I found no shade so arrogant toward God, not even him who fell from the Theban walls. And without another word, he fled, and there I saw a furious centaur race up, roaring, "Where is the insolent blasphemer? Where?" I do not think as many serpents swarm in all the Maremma as he bore on his back from the haunch to the first sign of our human form. Upon his shoulders, just behind his head, a snorting dragon whose hot breath set fire to all it touched lay with its wings outspread. And my guide said, "That is Cacus." Time and again, in the shadow of Mount Aventine, he made a lake of blood upon the Roman plain. He does not go with his kin by the blood-red fosse because of the cunning fraud with which he stole the cattle of Hercules. So he's talking about the centaurs that we met earlier in Inferno. And thus it was his thieving stopped, for Hercules found his den and gave him perhaps 100 blows with his club, and of them he did not feel the first 10. Meanwhile the centaur passed along his way, and 3 wraiths came. Neither my guide nor I knew who they were until we heard them say, "You there, who are you?" And there our talk fell still, for we turned to stare at them. I did not know them, but by chance it happened, as it often will. One named another. "Where is Cianfa?" he cried. "Why has he fallen back?" I placed a finger across my lips to signal to my guide. Reader, should you doubt what I next tell you, it will be no wonder, for though I saw it happen, I can scarce believe it possible, even in hell. For suddenly, as I watched, I saw a lizard come darting forward on 6 great taloned feet, and fasten itself to a sinner from crotch to gizzard. Its middle feet sank in the sweat and grime of the wretch's paunch. Its forefeet clamped his arms, its teeth bit through both cheeks, and at the same time its hindtail fastened on the sinner's thighs, its tail thrust through his legs and closed its coil over his loins. I saw it with my own eyes. No ivy ever grew about a tree as tightly as that monster wove itself limb by limb about the sinner's body. They fused like hot wax, and their colors ran together until neither wretch nor monster appeared what he had been when he began. And just so, before the running edge of the heat on the burning page, a brown discoloration changes from black as the white dies from the sheet. The other two cried out as they looked on, "Alas, alas, Angelo, how you change! Already you are neither two nor one." And the two heads had already blurred and blended. Now the two semblances appeared and faded, one face where neither face began nor ended. For from the four upper limbs of man and beast 2 arms were made, then members never seen, grew from thighs and legs, belly and breast. Their former likenesses modeled and sank into something that was both of them and neither, and so transformed it slowly left our bank. As lizards at high noon of a hot day dart out from hedge to hedge, from shade to shade, and flash like lightning when they cross the way, so toward the bowels of the other two shot a similar monster, a small monster, livid, furious, and black as a peppercorn. Its lunge bit through that part of one of them from which a man receives his earliest nourishment. Then it fell back and lay sprawled out in front of the 2 thieves. Its victim stared at it but did not speak. Indeed, he stood there like a post and yawned, as if lack of sleep or fever had left him weak. And the reptile stared at him, and he at the reptile. From the wound of one and from the other's mouth 2 smokes poured out and mingled, dark and vile. Now let Lucan be still with his history of poor Cebalus and Nasidius, and wait to hear what next appeared to me. Of Cadmus and Arthusa be Ovid silent. I have no need to envy him those verses where he makes one fountain and one a serpent. For he never transformed 2 beings face to face in such a way that both their natures yielded their elements to each to each, as in this case. Responding sympathetically to each other, the reptile cleft his tail into a fork, and the wounded sinner drew his feet together. The sinner's legs and thighs began to join, and they grew together so that soon no trace of juncture could be seen from toe to loin. Point by point, the reptile's cloven tail grew to a form of what the sinner lost. One skin began to soften and one to scale. The armpit swallowed the arms. The short shank of the reptile's forefeet simultaneously lengthened by as much as a man's arms shrank. Its hind feet twisted round themselves and grew the member man conceals. Meanwhile, the wretch from his one member generated 2. The smoke swelled up about them all the while. It tanned one skin and bleached the other. It stripped the hair from the man and grew it on the reptile. While one fell to his belly, the other rose without being shifted. The locked evil eyes below that which they changed snouts and they changed pose. The face of the standing one drew up and toward the temples, and from the excess matter that gathered there, ears grew from the smooth skin. While the matter left below the eyes, the excess became a nose, and the same size, forming the lips of an appropriate size. Here the face of the prostrate felon slips, sharpens into a snout, and withdraws its ears as a snail pulls in its horns. Between its lips, the tongue, once formed for speech, thrusts out a fork. The forked tongue of the other heals and draws into its mouth. The smoke has done its work. The soul that had become a beast went flitting and hissing over the stones, and after it the other walked along talking and spitting. Then turning his new shoulders, said to one that still remained, "It is Buoso's turn to go crawling along this road as I have done." Thus did the ballast of the 7th hold shift and reshift, and may the strangeness of it excuse my pen if the tale is strangely told. And though all this confused me, they did not flee so cunningly, but what I was aware that it was Puccio Scanticato alone of the 3 that first appeared, who kept his old form still. The other was he for whom you weep, Gavil. All right. So, the thieves. So let's go back and pick up with Canto 24 and just kind of make our way through this. So, obviously there's a lot of imagery here, there's a lot of details here, but what's standing out to you in the thieves? And it can be either one of these, since both these cantos discuss the same punishment, the same sin.
A lot of reptiles.
A lot of reptiles.
Weird reptiles.
A lot of weird reptiles.
6 legs.
Yeah.
Like spiders.
Like spiders or dragons, really, even. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you describe something like that? It's undescribable.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I think part of this too is an intentional loss of identity because of their thievery, right? So they stole what belonged to others, and so they lose it completely and totally in hell, to the point that they change into monsters, essentially, right? Into dragons, into lizards.
They lose their humanity.
Exactly.
I don't know, on that one that I read, it definitely got into politics at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who Pistoia is. I know we talked about the black and the white.
Yes.
Yeah, the armies.
So yeah, the black and the white would be the black and white Guelphs, who basically continued to trade off rule of Florence during Dante's time. Dante, I believe, allied himself with the white Guelphs, and so he was exiled for that when the black Guelphs took over. And so this is a prophecy from Vanni
This
Fucci
is a prophecy
about essentially Florence to hurt Dante, right?
Okay.
So remember, oddly enough, those that are damned in hell can somehow weirdly see at least near future type aspects, but they can't perceive what's going on in the moment on Earth. We talked about this a while back, but as the day of judgment draws near, their ability to kind of foresee things happening in Earth gets shorter and shorter, because eventually, obviously, there's no more future for them because they will be judged in the final judgment.
So I see he was saying, I don't feel so good about things. I have some bad news to tell you.
And the whole reason he did that is because he was just offended that he had to tell his own sin, right? So we see this even is totally different than what it was from the earlier sinners that he comes across. A lot of them wanted to be remembered. Mm-hmm. When you get back to Earth, tell people, find my family, tell them where I'm at, these kind of things. Similar aspect of the rich man and Lazarus. But the deeper he gets into hell, these people are angry that they're found out, or they don't want to be remembered at all.
Well, but he had said a look of dismal shame, so he was shamed by it too. So, but he says he has to answer truthfully.
Yeah, he's kind of compelled, just by the nature of his punishment. One other thing I thought was actually quite fascinating in this, in line 55, actually it's a little before that, where we see Virgil he encourages Dante, but it's a little harshly, right? Dante gets a little weary climbing out of this ditch, and he just needs to sit down and catch his breath, which, that's understandable, right? If you're climbing, you're going to be tired. But he says, look, you need to get up, right?
Yeah.
You can't just sit here. But what he reminds him of a little further down, starting in line 55, he says, there is yet a longer ladder to climb. This much is not enough. If you understand me, show that you mean to profit from your time. This is actually the first mention that they're close to purgatory. So he's saying, look, the descent is the easy part. We're about to have to start climbing, and that's going to be a lot harder than this. So it's get up. This is not that hard. Basically, walk it off.
What was the point about the phoenix?
The phoenix. Okay, so in this circle, this actually happens early on. I think it's just used as an image here because these sinners, if they're bitten by any of these serpents that are binding them, basically burst into flames like a phoenix, dying and coming back from the ashes. So in this case, I think he uses the phoenix as an image of what's going on to these sinners. So because there's one that, actually it's
that one,
the one that speaks to him.
Flames.
He goes running by, and one of the serpents bites him in the neck. He bursts into flames, falls into ashes, and then is reborn out of those ashes to suffer again. So I think he just uses a phoenix
Just
as
the
an
cyclical.
That's just it's just a complete
nature.
cyclical.
That's just a
yeah.
picture describing
Yep.
what happened.
In Clement, one of the early apostolic fathers, he uses the phoenix as an image of Christ.
Really.
Yeah.
Oh, like
Because
the
it's
resurrection.
a thing of resurrection. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's why it
Yeah.
caught my attention.
Yeah, and of course Dante is I mean he uses some biblical resurrection type imagery, but it's always meant, at least in hell, meant to be an inversion of it for
Right.
their torment.
Right.
The thing primarily about Canto 25 is just the further punishment of the thieves and their transformation. It's he leans on Ovid a little bit in his Metamorphosis as an example there toward the end. Even basically saying, even the Metamorphosis that Ovid writes of is nothing compared to what I'm seeing in this particular ditch of hell. These are just horrors beyond comparison, but I'm going to try to write them, so hopefully you believe me.
I loved what the thing said here when you, the
Mhm.
little summation where it said, because they were thieves, so they took the substance of others, transforming it into their own,
Mhm.
so then they are condemned to being transformed, losing themselves.
Mhm.
That was pretty
Constantly
good.
stealing
Yeah.
bodies from each other.
Yeah.
I think about all these people that do these raids on stores where 100 people come in and just
Oh,
start
yeah.
ripping stuff
Yeah.
off and just, tearing everything up. It's just, what kind of future do they have?
Mhm, mhm,
So,
yeah.
Or when there's burning, things are going to people just, they all go for the liquor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the liquor and the TV sets. So, and tennis shoes.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know why the transformation from snake to human is so different from that of the lizard to human?
I really don't. I really don't. I wasn't able to find much on it. I don't even think Ciarda even really talks about it in his notes.
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
I think it's just the only thing I could come up with is the reptilian aspect of it that is used as the imagery of thievery. And so it's just I think that really is just all it comes down to. I don't know if there's a difference between lizard or snake as much as it is just reptile.
Did I miss something? Did somebody get turned into a snake? I thought they were just bound by the snakes and
Well,
coiled by
the
the
ashes
snakes. The ashes, I thought he came
come
back as a person.
as a snake.
Oh, and I read
Yeah,
that.
that's the way I
didn't
read
see
it.
The one guy there, Vauci Fucci, or whatever his name is, he just came back as a human, but it was after he had been burned by a snake bite.
Right, but the snake becomes the human being, doesn't he? That's what I thought. That's what he says.
I know some of them, they were talking about slithering on the ground. Maybe that's what. I thought it was all lizards, but maybe one of them was
You're
a
talking
snake.
about in the
Well, maybe.
the one that I read?
Maybe I misread it. Yeah, the one that you read.
No mortal pens. So, top of page 192 is when he comes
He
back.
said he immediately resumed its former shape, the one that went into ashes on line 105.
Yeah, what? Yeah, I guess I misread it.
Anyway, let me give you the.
You might have said, I'm Bono Fushi the Beast. Maybe you were thinking that, but he wasn't talking about it.
that from a note.
I chose the bestial life among the human, but he's just talking about what he did before.
So I've got a thought, but it may wind a little bit if now's a good time. Or I
No, it's
can
fine.
say
It's a good time. Go for it.
So I've only been here for I think 2 of the readings, but both of them have used a lot of animal imagery, where like when you're in hell, you become less human and more animal-like.
Mhm,
There
mhm.
seems to be a pattern there, and
Mhm.
I can't speak to the other ones that I wasn't here for. It's just those 2. But the other one I was here for talked a lot about dogs,
Mm-hmm.
how people were like dogs,
Mhm.
and this one is reptilian. So like today, the way that we learn about human nature and psychology and just understanding how humans work, we're always comparing them to animals. And I think there's a danger for us as Christians in how we describe who we are as bearers of God's image, that we don't describe being made in God's image as anything animal-like, because there is a distinction between humans and the rest of creation. We're different, we're set apart. And I mean, especially when things are rightly ordered and when we're living in our calling, we're not like these characters.
Yeah.
You know, we there is an aspect of us that's biological, but biological is almost the only way that we know to describe ourselves in today's way of thinking. I mean, even spiritual maladies are described as biological conditions, and like, you know, diseases of the brain in a chemical way or a hormonal way. So, I mean, I've thought for a number of years now about, like, what does it mean to be made in God's image? This is just sort of a fascination I've had for a while, and almost all of the answers that I hear are just wrong, because it's not what the quality that makes us being made in God's image is not creativity, because animals are creative. Some animals are incredibly creative, like sea creatures and things like that, birds, the way they make their nests and everything. And it's not rationality. It's not consciousness, because we can see that in other aspects of nature. None of those are defining qualities that make us particularly human. So we really have to be careful when we talk about who we are as Christians and followers of Christ, because there's a quality that makes us different from the rest of the world, and we almost don't have the language to talk about it. Does that make sense at all?
Well, I think in some ways, one thing that separates humans from the rest of, you know, all the animals is the imagination.
Animals have a great imagination.
They don't. No, they don't.
Yeah, I just don't agree on that.
Yeah, they do not. They're just, it's all instinct. They just do, they operate by instinct. They can't envision a future. They can't, you know, imagination allows you to be able to create something in your mind's eye that has not previously existed. Animals can't do that. So it's, they can do everything else, but they can't foresee their future.
So you think when a bird is making a nest, it's not imagining what the nest will look like?
No, it's just a total instinct. You know, just operating out of, this is who they are, this is what they do. You know, so they don't think about it. I don't think they think about their eggs being, you know, so they can envision their little creatures coming out. They don't have a mind that operates that way. So,
Yeah, I would say that a bird, any given bird, does not invent its nest, but it does create it. It does put it together.
yeah, they can create a beautiful nest. So,
But there are, you know, higher animals that have, you know, more or less invented tools, you know, used a stick for something that it would not necessarily do. But that's, you know, there's a, like everything else, there's a big gap between that and human beings, you know. But it's being created in God's image, I think it's multi-layered. I mean, for one thing, we understand there's a gap between us and God. So, I don't think.
Well, there's certainly a gap between us and God. Yeah.
But we know that.
Okay.
And we're aware of that. Animals,
Yeah.
not so much.
the difference with us, I mean, we can imagine everything, but we are limited even in our imagination because it's based upon things that we are already surrounded by. We don't come up with something has not already been created.
Yeah.
Was the difference here? With God's imagination, He can create things that
created
never
things from
existed.
nothing.
So I've seen experiments I've seen videos of these experiments where colonies of ants will move objects through a maze, right? And that's not just robotic instinct. There's some creativity involved in like the hive mind of how they all work together to solve a puzzle.
Right. I would say that's true. Because I think they are creative. Bees think about building their little triangle, their shapes.
Yeah.
They're perfect.
You know, it's perfect, but that's still instinctual.
Yeah.
It's something that's within that how God made them to be
To
an
be able to do
amazing
those
God
jobs.
that
Yeah,
had
to be
that
that.
had made them so that they could do it.
Could we not apply that argument to humans and say we're imaginative because it's instinctual?
No,
We have an instinct to be imaginative and creative.
since I'm not very creative,
Yeah.
I don't go along with that.
Yeah.
Some people are just gifted.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot about animal behavior that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like flocking behavior.
Yeah.
How does a whole flock
It's
of birds
amazing.
turn at the same time?
Yeah, it's amazing, but that's yeah.
You know, and there are theories, but I don't know. I mean, I haven't studied this at
Yeah,
all, so I don't
yeah.
know how proven they are.
Yeah.
Science tends to come up with a theory and decide, well, that's it. You know.
Yeah.
And then 30 years later, what do you know? That's not it. You know?
Yeah.
Well, this may really come back to the aspect of mystery in all things before the Age of Enlightenment, and even somewhat going back to your study through Esther DeWall's Celtic way of prayer, having a more intense connection with nature, not so much from a pagan perspective, but with God's creation in that regard. And I don't know if this is the right answer either, but maybe the difference, because I don't know where I would land on this, but maybe, I'm sorry, oh, that's your shoe, not your foot. Maybe the difference is eternality. I don't know. I mean, if we want to argue that animals are eternal or not, I don't know.
That's not it either.
But that's not it either.
Because angels, humans have a specific designation of being made in God's image
Yeah.
that angels don't have.
That's true.
So that's not it
So-
either.
There's an interesting quote, and I have it, you know, because I did a huge study on imagination where an alien comes to Earth, and he's talking to humans as to what separates them from animals.
Mhm.
He says he uses the concept of bear. The bear is bigger than you. It has a bigger brain than you do. It can maybe use tools. It can do all these kind of stuff. But the one thing it does not have is an imagination. It can't imagine what the future would be like. It can't imagine what. It can't take you. It can't take you someplace else. So it's that one thing that separates us from them. So we can, with our imagination, we can. You know, I mean, I imagine. Okay, all right, you know. So if I had $1 million, what would I do? You know, so if that person comes back to me and says one more thing, what am I going to do? I can, you know, that's our imagination. It's powerful, and it's a powerful tool that separates us. It makes us different.
We have that, but also God chose us particularly. He created us special and separate to have communication with Him, and so that doesn't get into the image, but
Well, part of it is as simple as the
that's why we
incarnation.
can.
You know, I mean, it really is a part of it is as simple as that. We just
How
look like
so?
Him. We look like God the Son.
God
Because of the
becomes,
incarnation, you know,
the God
this is
becomes human. It
setting
could
up
have.
He didn't
the
come
whole
back as the lion.
thing in
Yeah,
place.
he's called the Lion of Judah, but he's not a lion.
Well, and maybe just to tie this back to Dante in relation to, because he does bring up animals in a few other places in the circles regarding anger and hatred. I mean, it's maybe, and I'm not saying that we don't have the capacity to do this. So maybe the difference between animals and humans, which is why they're compared to animals so much in hell in Dante, is being pared down to our base instincts, right? So a bird making a nest envisions the future enough in order to know I'm about to lay eggs, so I need to make a nest in order to lay eggs. A bear understands the future enough to say I have to eat enough because I have to hibernate. But base instinct, and I don't know how to carry this even farther, but in relation to Dante, it could simply be the aspect that we're being pared down to the base instinct of what these animals actually represent on Earth. So anger and vile and whatever could be represented by a pack of wild dogs tearing somebody apart. Snakes are sly and wily, and so this is what thieves are, right? So this might be the reason he's using particular animals for certain punishments.
The descent of man, it starts with you're a human, and then you become animal-like.
Mm-hmm.
Start behaving like an animal, without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step down is that you become a demon. So that's your descent.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Well, in that earlier circle of hell, that's lesser hell. So dogs are a lot closer to us than snakes are. So as hell gets worse, then the
animalistic
imagery gets worse.
The animalistic imagery gets worse. So,
And I think you may be right about that lizard. It's actually, lizards don't have 6 legs, but dragons often do.
Mhm.
In
in some cultures they
Arts.
do have, yeah.
Well, and the whole bursting into flames thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Do you think animals communicate with God?
I think they can. I think some animals have the capacity for worship, but I think they tend to direct that towards people. I mean, my dog definitely worships me.
well,
Yeah.
Well, your dog, yes.
Your dog is a heretic.
Yeah, your dog.
Yeah.
Your dog knows that.
Or I'm an image bearer
you
of God.
That you take care of him and you play
what's
with
the old
him.
story of the guy that said,
all of that, but
my
that's
wife worships me because every day she brings burnt offerings to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a valid point to that, though. I mean, there's this great song by this group that I like. That's just called "I'm a Dog," but the aspect is of the song is we do things for God the way we look at God the way a dog looks at us. That's kind of the aspect. So I mean,
another problem that I have with the imagination, and this applies to any defining quality as saying this is what it means to bear God's image, is that, well, what if someone is not imaginative?
mm-hmm.
There are people who don't have much imagination. Are they less made in God's image? I would say no.
Everybody has imagination. And that's why you have to make it grow. And oftentimes the way it's a split between philosophies too, because we came up with the scientific method, and that sort of destroys the imagination. So you're in class and you're mentally imagining something, and you're off in some other space, and the teacher says, "Stop it! Get out of there! Don't do that! Come back to reality! Come back to this!"
Yeah.
And so we've been trained, we've been taught that, and so we don't want to use our imaginations. It's something that we have to learn to use. And even the Bible is very clear. It says we can't even imagine the glorious things that God has prepared for us. And so part of it is we need to start imagining that, some more. And you have to put it to work.
well, and they're
But everybody has one.
It has the imagination, but some people are not so creative.
Or that,
I'm
or
not
some
talking
people.
about creativity.
Right.
I'm talking about imagination. Because
We all
what'll
do,
happen, I can
we're
imagine
thinking.
beautiful things.
Yeah.
I don't have the talent or the ability to be able to create them. So somebody else has to do that. So,
Well,
God-
we all have imagination to some extent because we're all problem solvers.
Yeah.
And it may be that your problem is easy to solve. Where's the screwdriver? But and again, there are higher animals that kind of have that
Make it cooler.
capacity as well. When they're forced to.
Humans tend to be the force that pulls it out of them.
Well, I'm sure the animals in the wild, like a chimpanzee, they can't reach the coconut. They can use a stick to try to knock it off.
They haven't. I don't think they've been observed doing that in the wild. I think they only do that in captivity.
Well, that may be.
But say
Maybe they're more studied in captivity though, so it would make that make
Well,
you know,
certainly. Yeah.
say you're babysitting, you know, and you hear a noise. You're at someone's house babysitting their children, and you hear a noise. You know, what happens to the imagination at that point? You know, so you can start thinking it's anything. You know, so when in reality it may be nothing. You know, so only the wind, but it can be we even go way beyond just it's some guy trying to break in. It's a monster. So I mean that we can go we can go anywhere with it. Stanislavski, the great theater teacher, called it the magic imp. He said with the magic imp, it is the most powerful thing we have, because with it we can go anywhere. We can be anything we want to be. We can imagine anything we want. So it's a tool. It's a powerful tool that we have to be able to place ourselves in an identity with someone else. You know, so.
But
Especially,
oh, go ahead.
so yeah, so especially for acting, because I can. If I were this person in this situation, what would I do?
Mm-hmm.
What would I think? What would I say? And so it's just a tool of imagination. So
Well, I think maybe to Connor's point in relation to what does it mean to be created in God's image? You made a point about some humans aren't capable of imagination
or less capable.
or less capable.
less
Yeah.
capable.
There are some that are less capable. I mean, you could easily make the argument. This is not to disagree with either of you, but you could probably easily make the argument that somebody born with or damaged by something that causes them brain damage to the point that their imagination no longer works, right? Like somebody that's born with an extreme disability, or they do not become less an image bearer. So they're still made in the image of God, even if they do not have that capacity anymore.
They may have more of an imagination
And they
than
may.
any of us.
It may be that we're just not
They
able
can't
to.
communicate
We can't communicate it.
So-
But that argument could be thrown out there.
Yeah.
So then it does come back to, well, what does it mean to be made in the image of God? Is it?
And God
It's more than
chose
us just being bipedals and looking human, right? Although that is the stuff of the incarnation. So there's something to be said of that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to try to list them, but I think it has layers and layers.
Well, I think for me, it's very clear in Corinthians where Paul says that we need to learn how to cast down our imaginations at the feet of Christ, because your imagination can be good, or it can be evil, or it can be nothing. You know, so I think that's why it's important for us to keep submitting it to God, because then when I start praying and images start popping in my head, if I've surrendered to God and I'm trusting Him, then I can trust that the images that I may be seeing in my mind's eye, that should guide my prayer. You know, so done in a way that's pleasing to God is what it's all about. You know, there is such a thing as a wicked imagination. That's why God destroyed them in the first place. Because if you read in Genesis, it's because of their wicked imagination. So that's what He said. I wish I had never made them. You know, so I would destroy them all. And with that, I mean, we see that all around us. Wicked imagination, just creating the most ungodly things you've ever seen in your life. So, what an imagination Dante had to have to take us down to the very depths of hell. So,
There are fish species where the male finds a flat, like the flattest area of the seabed it can find, and then it creates rings of sand. Or maybe you've seen videos of this. It creates concentric circles of rings in the sand. And then once it's made enough of those, it goes and finds shells. And it places the shells in like artistic places all around the concentric circles. And then it waits for a female fish to come along. And if the female fish likes the artwork enough, then they mate.
They mate.
And if it doesn't, then it goes and it finds another male fish that did a better job.
Yeah.
There's got to be some imagination involved in that. That can't just be robotic. That's
Well, it's,
I don't know,
it's
it's an animal,
instinctive,
so-
it's just the way God created them.
These
You know,
fish need to be psychoanalyzed.
I mean,
I mean, there are birds that go
A
through the
spider
elaborate
building-
dances
Oh,
the
yeah.
same way,
A spider building a web.
a
a spider building a web is amazing, so if you think about it.
yeah.
And hey, they have, I just read this. just
They have
so-
to imagine the finished product in order
Yeah.
for it to have any.
And then they take it
coherence.
apart every night. rebuild
No,
it.
I always just figured they just do it.
Well, that what it is, I don't know if you've ever watched or seen these
The John
videos
3.
done by the John 1010 project. It's about intelligent design, okay? And I just watched the one on spiders. So they have 3 different types of string. You know,
Yeah.
so 3 different types.
Right.
And they have to use them in a very specific way. You know,
Right.
so there's the heavy duty one, and then there's the medium one, and then there's the real light one that's the very center of their web. And you know, so, and they just instinctively know when to spit the right one out and when, you know, so.
That's all pointing up to the fact that God
Intelligent design,
Yeah.
that, you know, God, I mean, so God
He
designed
created
them,
that fish.
designed them to be able to do that. You know, and it shows that they could not have evolved by using one strand and then kind of figuring out how to make another one. They had to be created that way. It's impossible for them to operate if they weren't created in that way completely from the beginning. And that's a good. You should watch those every so often. You can get them on. Just go to
The internet.
online.
They probably
John
had the
1010
fish.
project. They're so well done. Their videos are just perfectly done. But I think you would love it because you're into that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So because they've done a bunch of different animals and trees. You know, trees
Amazing.
communicate with each other.
That's true.
So, and there's a master tree in the middle, and then they branch, and so they call it the worldwide web of trees. So, which is, to me, when I saw that, I was blown away by it, because it's just unbelievable to think that God, that had to be designed that way. It could not have just happened.
And definitely when nature will be freed. I mean, nature is oppressed right now. It does say that nature will glorify and praise
That's
God.
why
All nature is
nature
groaning
worships
now.
God. You know, so like you say, I mean, the trees clap their hands. You know, so the wind worships God. So that's why he uses it as an image. The Holy Spirit is wind. You know, so like fire. So. But anyway, I'd love to talk to you more about that too.
Well, thank y'all. Next week, we'll do Cantos 26, 27, and 28. That was the last week of 4 throwing